Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Okay, so it is wrap up time. I'm going to go through everything that I read in the month of February. It was an okay month. I read a couple of really good books and I read some that were just kind of mediocre. I did manage to get through my planned 8 books this month. I did switch one out because it was just too long for me to get through and I'd already read several long books. So I switched out one for one that was a little bit shorter, but other than that, I did meet my plans. So I started out with Christopher Pike's Witch. And I'm not going to talk about this a whole lot because I actually do want to do a review of this book. And the reason why I chose to do a review on this one was because this was my favorite Christopher Pike as a kid. And I had high expectations of, you know, rereading it and just kind of reliving all of that nostalgia. So I'll go over that a little bit more in the review, and that'll be coming up soon on the channel. The next book I read was Slayer by Kiersten White, and I'd heard mediocre reviews on this book. People said, you know, it was just kind of okay, and I had to read it for myself because in my mind, like, I'm a humongous Buffy fan, and I'm like, how can you screw up Buffy? Like, you can't, right? So I took my chances with it, and honestly, I didn't have a really good time with this one. I gave it 3 stars. But it was just kind of okay. And I found that this book was like a little bit juvenile, I guess. And I know it's YA and I know I'm not the target audience, but I do still read YA from time to time, of course, as you know. And it just really missed the mark. I found the main character was very annoying. So just to go into a little bit of the synopsis, I did do a synopsis, you know, in my TBR as well, but this follows the twin daughters of Merrick, who was Buffy's original Watcher, of course, before Giles, and, you know, that's what the first movie was based off of. And these are his 2 daughters, and they basically are being raised at the Watchers Academy, and the main character finds out that she is the very last chosen one. And her sister, I believe, is in Watcher training, and basically they blame Buffy for their father's death. So the main character, Nina, is I found her to be very whiny. Let me just put it that way. I found her to be incredibly whiny, incredibly annoying. It was just a lot of this teenage angst, and like I said, I know it's YA, I'm not really the target audience, but I found a lot of it was very, very annoying. And we were reminded literally every 5 minutes about how much she hates Buffy. And she ruined her life, and she's the reason she doesn't have a father. And like, I get that, you know, that's part of the plot, but I didn't need to be reminded of it every 5 minutes. And so I did finish it. I enjoyed the ending. I found reading the entire book was not enjoyable until like the very last chapter, and then things started to pick up. But I have to say, I didn't enjoy it enough to continue on with the series. As you know, I hauled the second book, which is called Chosen, in this duology, and I'm just not going to be continuing on with it. I just can't go on with it, you know, any more of this main character's whining. So my reading did pick up with my next physical book, which was, of course, Don't Tell a Soul by Kiersten Miller. And I did a full review of this on the channel. I believe it was in my last video, so I'll have that link down below if you didn't get to see it. And I gave this book a full 5 stars. This is another YA. I read quite a few YA this month, actually, and I really enjoyed this book. So like I said in the review, you know, there's kind of a mystery going on with the mansion that this girl's uncle owns, and then there's a haunting element, and she lives in a small town and everybody has secrets. And this was just a really, really nice, fast-paced book, so highly recommend this one. And then the last book that I read this month was actually a Fear Street. It's One Evil Summer by R.L. Stine. And this was another just really awesome walk down memory lane, and these little vintage YA horrors they're just so nice and compact. You're not bored with the story. There's not a whole lot, you know, going on in the way of like overdevelopment or anything like that. It's just a really nice, cozy little horror, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading this one. I didn't read this one as a kid, so this story was completely new to me, and I really enjoyed it. It was, like I said, it was cozy, it was fast-paced, it had a good ending, and yeah, so I gave this one 4 stars. So moving on to the ebooks that I read, I started off with What's Wrong with Valerie by D.A. Fowler. And this is quite a popular classic vintage horror, and I was really excited to read this one. I had heard a couple of people say that, you know, it was quite good, and it had kind of like a possession kind of element, and this girl was just completely crazy and she was killing her roommates. And, you know, she had to appease these creatures that were in her house. And she was talking to dead relatives who were like in the mirror or who would just show up in her room. And I thought it was going to be really good. And, I thought it was mediocre. I thought it was okay, but I was a little bit disappointed. I thought it was going to be much better than it actually was, but I still went ahead and gave it 3 stars. And the next ebook that I read picked up a little bit from the first one. So it's Midnight in the Pentagram by Kenneth W. Cain. And this is a short story collection. It's quite long. I found it took me forever to read this. It was quite long, but I did enjoy it. And these stories kind of all have an element of like demons or hell or the devil or whatever like that. And of course, with any anthology, especially if it's multiple authors and not just a collection from one author, I enjoyed some of the stories way more than I enjoyed some of the other ones. And honestly, if I was slogging through a story and I really wasn't enjoying it, I just kind of skipped over and went to the next one. But this is quite a long anthology. There were a couple of stories in here, like one where this woman she was blind and she got an eye transplant, and things that the person who the transplant came from saw, she could now see. I don't want to give anything away, but that story, it's still with me. I really enjoyed it. And there was a couple in there like that. So I really enjoyed this book overall. Like I said, there was a couple of stories that weren't really my cup of tea, but overall I gave it 4 stars. So I was planning on reading The Sky Stone, which is the first book in the Dream of Eagle series, and I mentioned that in my TBR, but I had just finished a couple of really long books and I was kind of feeling a little bit slogged, so I set that one aside because it is an epic fantasy, and I decided to replace it with an ebook that I listened to while I was cleaning out and reorganizing my entire pantry last weekend, and it was quite a big job, so I just wanted to put on something that was just an easy listen and, could just accompany me while I was cleaning out my pantry. So the book was called Ghost Stories, an Anthology of Spooky Tales by Anthony Addis, and I listened to this on Scribd, and it was okay. It was, again, an anthology of kind of like ghost stories. I enjoyed some of the stories, some of them weren't so great, but overall it was a lackluster read, I have to say. Maybe it was because I listened to it on audio, I'm not really sure, but I didn't really enjoy my time with it. I only gave it 2 stars. And I finished out the month with Roseneath by Dana McSwain, and this story was completely different than what I was expecting, and the synopsis is very short when I went into it, so I didn't have a whole lot of idea of what was going to happen in this story. But I was expecting more of a gothic haunted house story, and there were some of those elements in there, absolutely, but it was more focused on the family dynamic and family drama that was going on kind of alongside of the fact that this couple moved into this haunted mansion. And a lot of the story had to do with their loss of their daughter, and basically the woman was pregnant, they were looking forward to having a baby, and the baby was born as a stillbirth in the house suddenly. And a lot of it had to do with dealing with that grief and what they were going through, and the husband had to go away for work, and then the wife was in this house trying to get over this grief, and she was experiencing some haunting elements. And that was all fine and good, but as the story kind of went along, it went to some places that I was completely not expecting. Like, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away, but it was kind of weird towards the end. I'm not gonna lie. When I first started reading it, it reminded me a lot of the first book in the Messy Man series, which is called The Nightmare Room, and I really enjoyed it. It kind of had the same sort of flow, but then as the story developed, it just went way off into left field. And I finished it. It was okay, but it wasn't really my cup of tea, I have to say. And I kind of went back and forth with, you know, what I was going to rate it, and I'm gonna stick with a 2.75 stars, because usually if I give something 3 stars, you know, I liked it. And with this book, like, it was okay. I finished it. It was a fine story, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. So I'm gonna dock it by that 1/4 star and go with 2.75. I had heard a lot about this book as well, and it just really didn't live up to my expectation, unfortunately. So there you have it. That was everything I read in February. Like I said, it was a mediocre month. I had some books that I really enjoyed, and funny enough, it was the YA that I really enjoyed, and then I had some other books that, you know, I just really didn't enjoy, but altogether I still finished 8 books, so we were right on target. So there you go. That's my February wrap up. Please, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books and if you enjoyed them. I'd really love to discuss these ones with you guys down in the comments. But until next time, stay spooky, guys. Bye.